The Steven Crowder Daily Wire $50 million feud has escalated. The Rubicon has been crossed, and there's no turning back now for Steven Crowder. If you missed my previous video, please watch that first before sounding off in the comments, because I covered a lot of this in detail there. There are some new developments, so we will continue now. This involves two of the biggest players in conservative media, or at least in the new conservative media, and it involves two conflicting business models, and, I have to be honest, some very shady behavior on the part of Steven Crowder. And if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that I'm a big critic of the Daily Wire. Yesterday, Steven Crowder released excerpts of a secretly recorded phone call that he had with the CEO of the Daily Wire, the co-CEO, Jeremy Boring, supposedly showing the receipts, the proof that he had that they were in bed with big tech. And we'll get into how unethical it is to secretly record conversations with your supposed friends that you've known for 10 years in a moment. But Steven's trying to paint this as if he was just trying to look out for little YouTubers who are up and coming and might get ensnared, this next generation of YouTubers, in these terrible exploitative contracts at places like the Daily Wire.
And not even for me, but for other people coming up facing these kinds of contracts.
Let's say it's a kid who comes in with 500,000 YouTube subscribers or something like that, 100,000. Let's say it's some other kid you're paying six figures to come in and do it. There's not the penalty of the demonetization or if they're removed from iTunes, Apple, YouTube.
Yeah, sure there would be.
Wow, you mean when they lose their audience and then the ad reads aren't being heard on those platforms, the advertisers aren't going to pay the Daily Wire, so the Daily Wire is going to cut the pay of the hosts? Wow, well, what a surprise. Next, Crowder will get the Daily Wire on tape admitting that water is wet. His other point is that the Daily Wire will supposedly own your content if you sign up with them, and he was worried about them stealing his content or taking ownership of it and then getting stuck in this terrible contract
That you then own.
Well, I own parts of it. I don't own it. They can, when their contract's up, they can still go out and they'll still be famous. They can keep doing their shows, so go do a show somewhere else. They'll be in a far, far, far better place. You helped make them.
No, not long as this contract. This contract owns it in perpetuity even after the contract. You're paying a lease but getting ownership. That's what this contract is.
On the content that we paid to produce, yes.
But Crowder's new business that he's launching would never do that.
Here at Mug Club, we will never take any ownership over your social media platforms or your channels, and I don't want a dime ever of your YouTube revenue.
Yeah, you're also not going to be producing their shows. You're not going to be providing them with cameras and lights and the studio. You're just going to be giving people a percentage of the memberships that they sell for your Mug Club. Totally different than producing content. In the case of Brett Cooper, the young girl who works over there, is barely 20 years old, if she leaves the Daily Wire and goes somewhere else, that is actually not her YouTube channel. That's the show's channel. They not only created the channel, but they paid to produce her show. She's using their studio, their cameras, their producers, their everything. Jay Leno doesn't own The Tonight Show. When NBC fired him, he doesn't get to keep the show. It's not his. Elijah Schaffer used to work for The Blaze. He has his own YouTube channel, but when working for The Blaze, they started another YouTube channel called You Are Here in The Blaze's studio, The Blaze's staff, The Blaze's equipment. And he's no longer with The Blaze, and so that's not his channel. And that's completely understood in common sense. I think Crowder was misunderstood, that he would no longer own his show, which isn't true. He's producing his own show, his cameras, his lights, his studio. His offer, which wasn't even a contract, said that the Daily Wire would own content that they produce, like the movies that they make, like Matt Walsh's What is a Woman, or Candace Owens' documentary on Black Lives Matter. And Crowder thinks that he really got the goods on the Daily Wire because he captured Jeremy Boring on tape making a reference to wage slaves in the company. And it's a totally out of context clip, and it sounds like he's just being quite frank and honest about certain positions. It's a figure of speech, but Crowder is spinning it as if it's proof that the Daily Wire is enslaving people in their contracts.
They don't get deals that...
They can be wage slaves for a little bit, come over and make a salary and grow their brand. They can be wage slaves for a little bit.
Steven Crowder had been friends with Jeremy Boring for over a decade, and this was long after the negotiations for him possibly working there had fallen through, and Jeremy thought it was just conversations between friends. But Steven had planned it to get dirt on them, or try to get dirt, to then use as a publicity stunt to relaunch his subscription service for Mug Club. Secretly recording conversations with friends, especially friends that you've known for 10 years, or even people who are sort of your friends, or just work friends, or work associates, that's shady as hell, especially when you're doing so to try to cash in on it and stab them in the back, throwing them under the bus while launching your own subscription service to try to rival what they're doing. Unless they started talking about committing a terrible crime, not only is that low, that is extremely unethical, shady as hell, and in many states, illegal. Especially when the phone call revealed the obvious. They're not hiding their business model. What did Jeremy Boring reveal? That their business model is obviously to have talent to do ad reads and try to monetize their YouTube channels the best that they can. Wow, some breaking news there, Crowder. Crowder is right about some things, however. This is not black and white. The advertising business model has major drawbacks, like boycotts, demonetization, brands that don't want to be associated with certain people or certain channels, and Crowder's thinking along the lines of HBO, like a pay-per-view with no advertisers to be beholden to, and that's a great model for edgy content. And it sounds like Steven Crowder got hurt that he couldn't convince the Daily Wire to do that.
I'm not suggesting that the guidelines aren't terrible. I'm suggesting that if making money off of those platforms is part of how you're justifying the salary you're paying someone, then or the fee I keep saying salary, the fee you're paying someone, then when those go away, everybody loses money. You can't pay the same amount with less revenue.
How about you create a different business model?
But Crowder's painting this like he walked away from $50 million because he didn't want to be beholden to big tech. And it's not about money at all. What really happened was he made a counteroffer to their $12.5 million a year of $30 million a year. And then the Daily Wire just figured that there was no way that they were going to come to an agreement. And so they told them that it would probably be best if they just continued to do their own thing. So it seems like Crowder wanted to sell it to big tech for more money, but then after the Daily Wire decided that the two weren't a good fit and they couldn't afford his ridiculous amount of money, and then ended the negotiations, rebuffing him, and basically said, you'd just be better to do your own thing. Then he started getting really bitter. Now, a few things I didn't bring up in my video yesterday, and I'm glad that people brought them up in the comments, so let me address them. Yes, the $12.5 million a year that the Daily Wire was offering him was not pure profit. It was to produce his show, which has employees, writers, rent, co-host, but even if he were to pay the co-host $1 million a piece, and the writers $500,000 a piece, and editors and graphics people $250,000 or $500,000, he would still clear millions of dollars a year. How is poor Steven supposed to live off of only $5 million a year? If Crowder doesn't want to be in bed with big tech and beholden to their rules, which nobody does, but if he thinks that anyone who would submit themselves to such tyranny is a piece of crap, then why is he posting on YouTube at all? And speaking of restrictive contracts, why doesn't Steven Crowder release his former employee, his former co-host, or one of the sidekicks, Not Gay Jared, that's what the guy is, that's what he went by on the show, from his NDA, from his non-disclosure agreement, so he can actually talk about what it's like to work for Steven Crowder. Steven's worried about young up-and-coming YouTubers getting stuck in restrictive contracts, like the ones that he has his employees sign. He shot himself in the foot with this whole mess. He has some valid points about the flaws in the Daily Wire business model and only relying on advertisers, or mostly relying on advertisers, and moving to a pay-per-view model. That could be very difficult. And the way that he went about this makes him look not only like a jackass, but a complete grifter. Crowder's coming across like those former Trump administration officials who, once they left the administration, then they got a job attacking the administration. Crowder was once in Conservative Inc., in the center of it, rubbing elbows with Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin, but now that he has no revenue stream and Mug Club from the Blaze is gone, he has to build it all back up again. And he will tell you the truth if you'll just pay him $10 a month and subscribe to the new Mug Club, and he'll expose everybody that he used to work with. All of those phonies that he was happy to rub elbows with and promote and be friends with until they rebuffed his offer and he has no revenue coming in and he's desperate. And again, he was misrepresenting a lot of things from that offer. It wasn't a contract. From the $100,000 pay cut if he misses one show to Well, I don't want to go over it again. Just go watch my previous video if you missed it. He could have done his own thing and been critical of the Daily Wire's business model without burning bridges and throwing his supposed friends under the bus and then pretending like he's some hero exposing them. I saw some comments in my video yesterday that people must have posted before they actually got done watching it. You're a neocon, you're a shill, you're just trying to get a job with the Daily Wire, when the second half of my entire video was very critical of the Daily Wire. So is Steven Crowder finished? No, he'll fund himself with his new Mug Club members and he'll keep doing his thing, but a lot of people are never going to trust him again after that recording. Before the Daily Wire was very gracious. Jeremy Boring's initial response to him wasn't only thorough, I thought it was actually very classy. He even told people to subscribe to whatever it is that Steven is doing and to continue supporting him. But now, that bridge is gone. And I'm rescinding my offer to you as well, Stephen, about calling and brainstorming and strategizing, because you'll probably just record our conversation and try to bait me into saying something about certain people and then post a clip of it out of context online, making a video about it, about how terrible I am and how I should be canceled, and you're just much better than me. So you can lose my number, bro. And for those of you who enjoy content like mine, you can sponsor me directly through Patreon by clicking the link in the description below or through Subscribestar, because of those little flaws in the advertiser business model that we've been talking about. So subscribing through Patreon is basically like a tip. It's a way for you to sponsor your favorite YouTuber for $5 a month or however much you want. And so again, there's a link in the description below. That way I won't have to do annoying ad reads that start shilling random products the first 15 seconds of every video, because we all know that advertisements suck. I can't even listen to talk radio anymore because it's 40% commercials. So again, a big thanks to all you guys who sponsor the channel, and the links to that are in the description below. So click it and head on over there and check it out.
Set it and forget it. That's if you followed all the instructional material.